you have to take the risk. And when you feel vulnerable on stage, I think that's when you feel your music is the purest and it really represents you.
Hi, Joy. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well. Thank you, Victoria. How about you?
I am good. I am very happy to finally get to talk to you.
Here.
You are actually, in many ways, my first harp teacher because I took some lessons with you when my daughter started learning from you. And I have always wanted to talk to more local harpists. There are actually quite a lot here, but we haven't really had the chance. So I'm very grateful that you're taking the time with us to do this today.
I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us about your music journey? How did the harp come to your life?
Well, I moved to Vancouver when I was 12 years old. So I was born in Taiwan, and this is something that I don't even remember. My mom told me. So around, I guess, 3 years old, 2 or 3 years old, we had this competition, usually on singing, but sometimes they would have other things involved as well. And so I saw the harp on TV. And my mom was cooking in the kitchen, and I just ran and told my mom I wanted to learn the harp. And my mom didn't really even know what a harp was. And when she came out with me and saw on the TV, it was already gone. Like that segment was already finished. So she said, "Okay, well then why don't you show me the next week when the harp is on?" And I actually remembered. So I guess I was serious enough to actually remember. And in 7 days, I showed my mom again. So, and honestly, I think it was the time that my mom thought we should be also picking an instrument to start as well. So, not her first choice, but she thought, oh, okay, that might be interesting. I thought it would just be piano, but yeah, sure, we could try harp. But back then there was no Google or anything, so it took my mother actually a year to find a harp teacher in Taipei.
Wow.
She didn't know like where to start, But so I started the my first harp lesson when I was about 4 years old, and I just kept going at it. And I think I even told my mom, even just from the start, that I wanted to be a professional. So my mom, took me seriously, thankfully. And so I still feel like I'm learning the harp right now every day when I practice. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's great. You really did stick with it because you went on and pursued a master degree and eventually a doctoral degree on harp, which I have actually not came across a lot of people that have done it. Tell us about studying harp at university. What does that even look like? I think I was telling you, university music department to me, it's like a mystery box. Like I don't actually understand what happens in there and what people do. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your university experience?
I think when people think about university versus conservatory, they always feel like in conservatory it's more concentrated, it's more focused on music. Where when you go to university, it's more broadened, and not really from my experience, because right now for the universities they have performance degree or just like a general music. So in general music, I think it's more academic because you're kind of with general music degree you might be thinking of music business in the future, or going to like music education, as in being a high school music teacher or elementary school teacher, where if you are performance focused, you're thinking more of becoming a soloist, um, teaching on private, like a more a private lesson setting, and orchestral player. So I went into the performance degree. So it was almost the same as I think from like a conservatory setting. Yeah, so it was still mainly music focused. Yeah.
And your master degree was in Yale, and your
Yes.
doctoral degree is in Indiana University.
Yeah.
And how do you find the experience different going from the two school? And I think your bachelor was with UBC, right? So you have went through quite a number of universities. So how did that experience differ from each other? And what are some of your big takeaways from your
Well, let's start with
university
UBC
study?
because I
Right.
had my bachelor degree there. I thought it worked out timing wise perfectly because, I was still younger. And so being in Vancouver, it really helped me building up actually connections that actually became quite useful when I came back and start working. So in UBC, it was great, yeah, and it was like West Coast, and then I went to Yale, which was East Coast. Then Indiana is kind of in the middle, like Midwest. So I feel like I have also lived in different areas, so that was quite interesting. In Yale, Yale Music, it's called, the whole name is actually called Yale School of Music. So it wasn't a department, meaning that it's really way smaller in size than an actual faculty or department in university. Um, Mainly, I think well, first of all, when you get accepted, I was very lucky because just before my year, they announced, just maybe 1 or 2 years before I entered, they announced that they got a big donation. So everybody who got accepted would automatically get full scholarship, which which really helped
That's very
in my
nice.
decision making. That became my first choice. So obviously they couldn't accept too many people. It was really like I could feel they only wanted top notch, very serious music students, and in return, they really gave us very intensive music lessons. So I feel my solo really improved um, when I was in Yale, and it was quite interesting because I went to the school feeling that, oh, maybe I was one of the lucky music student who got accepted, but still feeling like a student. But when I talked to my classmates, then I started to realize that a lot of them already had an agent, and they were already kind of in their performing career already. They had concert tour lining up, and they had to miss this class because they are giving a concert in Munich. Like I felt they were already superstars. I had no idea why I was there. So it was quite mind opening
Oh.
to see, um, to see the potential that you could become. And I felt really humble to be able to be in the group. And also because it was a really small community, we all knew each other. So the bonding, the bond was very strong. I think most of the music students, they also make many friends with other people, other departments as well, just because it was so small. We had to like just get out and meet other friends. So it was interesting to talk and make friends with other people when you know that they were also made still like the top notch in their field, right? So very interesting experience. Yeah. Now, and it was also close to New York. It was just like a 1 or 2 hour train ride from New York. Yale is located in Connecticut. So when we had time off, we could also go to New York to see a Broadway show or to watch the Met Opera. So we have that East Coast vibe. Then I went to Indiana for my bachelor's, and Indiana Indiana Department of Music is actually, I think, the biggest in the world in terms
Wow.
of the size. Yeah, not just the harp department. The harp department was, I think, but then also just every like piano, violin. We were really known for our size. And
Wow.
also but when you have a big size, obviously you would have very strong players, and but also some players were, you could see that they were still learning to become on the top level. So it was interesting that way because of the size, and because of that we had very strong resources for students, because we had, most of the school would only have one or two opera productions a year. But in Indiana, I think we had 4 or 5 productions a year.
Wow.
And then for school orchestra, we didn't just have one, but we had 4 or 5. And we had to audition. We had like different levels, and we had to audition for so then we were assigned to different orchestras. So, and my teacher, my harp teacher during that time was Susan McDonald, who is like the godmother of the harp world. And I think she was already maybe close to 70 during that time when I went to her. So sometimes you would have to take a little time off, but during her time off, she would ask her former students to come and teach us. And her former students are already kind of mid-age, and they were actually international prize winners, and they were actually the harpists who are uh, uh, at their most versatile, stage. So they were very active, and a lot of them, like one from the Philadelphia, symphony, and one from Chicago symphony. So I had the honor to have lesson not just with Miss McDonald, but with so many fantastic harpists from all over the world. Um, we had, I think we had over 20 harp major in the studio as well, which
That's a
was,
lot.
yeah, because in UBC we had about 3 or 4 students, and in Yale we
Mm.
had about 4 or 5, which is normal, but in Indiana it's 20, so it felt more competitive. But it was also nice to actually be friends with harp another harpist and just talk about harp.
Mm.
But I also met my challenges. Like I always um, feel that I learned music quite quickly on the faster side, but then I actually met 2 girls who learn music much faster. That it just blew my mind off. And also people who were willing to practice more than me. that
Well,
was
that's hard to
also
imagine
that
actually,
was
because
also it really challenged my limit. So yeah, so it was again a eye opening experience. Yeah. One thing very special that I got from Indiana was the administration skill. Actually, that came in really helpful when now um, I run the harp department at the Vancouver Academy of Music. Um, a lot of ideas, I would have to say, was from observing how we could manage so many harpists, and maybe not just harpists, but so many students in Indiana, and how they could make everybody at different levels felt worthwhile staying there and have the most, the best experience, learning experience there. So I'm very grateful for that. So I felt in Yale, I was still younger. I really concentrated, focused on just developing my own artistry through my also another fantastic teacher, Dr. Jun Han, who also teaches at the Juilliard. So I really learned a lot from her, work on really some virtuosic solo pieces. And in Indiana, I sort of grew on my own, and then start thinking about the future. Now that I collected all the all the degrees I could get, what I was going to do. But this administrative skill was actually just you observe so naturally that you didn't realize during that time. But then now that when you think back, you knew where some of the inspirations and visions came from. So yeah.
Great stories and wonderful takeaway. And I think you hit the nail on the head about that administration skills. Because what I found personally is sometimes harp learning can be very lonely, right? It's a naturally leads to a one-on-one interaction, but playing with other is so much more fun. And having the opportunity to be with other harpists and growing together has such big value. And I'm really seeing your leadership in Vancouver Academy of Music, which we're going to talk about later, and how you build that community so that people feel more belonged to a group of people who share the same interests and passion. Right. So I think that is really awesome. And I can certainly, again, see sort of that breadth and depth of your knowledge and experience really coming together into play. So we're going to dabble into that in the rest of the interview. Now let's talk about your work in the orchestra, because you're pretty involved in the local orchestra scene, and you have recently became the principal harpist for the Vancouver Opera. Congratulations. And you play in a lot of different orchestra. What are some of the key skills that is necessary for someone to play in an orchestra, in your opinion? If someone want to become one, what are some of the things that they should work on?
Mm. So I think the most important thing is actually you have to have a very strong sense of rhythm, because more than half of the music that I received from orchestra, they were not as difficult as solo pieces that I was told to learn as a student, playing wise. But the most important thing is to know when you come in, because we always wait for such a long time. So you have to do a lot of way more studying than other instruments. I think in that aspect is to really write down the cues and know your entry. But once you enter, how do you fit in, with your sound and your rhythm and the pause with your colleagues? Um, I think that is the most important part, and be flexible also. And looking at the conductor, reading or your own music and playing, looking at your strings, it's also very challenging. So you kind of have to um, find a way in different passages to know that this part I really have to look at my fingers, so I have to listen very carefully, because I might not be able to see the conductor every, checking with the conductor every measure. But then some part you would have to give cues, and here you really have to look at him, otherwise you'll be off. So I think it's this kind of coordination and planning in advance that makes it hard.
Mhm. And this is a question from my husband, because he has also seen you play solo a couple of times. He wants to know what about performing that makes you really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I actually after I finished with my doctoral degree, I started off teaching quite heavily, um, but I never wanted to give up performing, because I feel like, well, physically I still can, I still young, I should, because you never know when you age, you never know what will happen with your elbows and shoulders. So that I feel there is a time limit physically, so I want to still perform. I love performing on stage, and it's so different than just making a recording. because that interaction between you and the audience and the uncertainty of what will happen on the stage makes it stressful but also exciting. It's unpredictable. So, for example, I feel we all need a little push, right? We're still just human beings. So whatever you're doing in your own practice room, it's very well planned, and you have. But then when you're on stage, once you you feel that extra push in you. Sometimes you might even surprise yourself with the sound and the speed and little things that just like came in mind. That's split second, and then you express it through your fingers. I think that's something that's really unique, and it's never the same. You can never recreate that. Through live performance, and just with the help of the concert hall also makes it special. And the vibe that you get from the audience sometimes also encourage you um, to do something different. Obviously, that's the positive side. The negative side will be you might have a pedal slide or something, or a string broke, or your mind just went blank, and then those type of uncertainty also yes damaging your
Yeah.
performance. But then I think you just have to take it's you have to take the risk, and when you feel vulnerable on stage, I think that's when you feel your music is the purest and it really represents you, no matter if you are what kind of mindset you are in right now. um, so it's very true.
Yeah. And do you have any favorite moments on stage so far if you look back to your performances?
I would have to say that when I played um, a concerto with the UBC Symphony Orchestra. That was maybe my very few concerto appearances with symphony. So I was still a newbie, and I was still learning, and there were some challenges. Um, but and I was very nervous before I went on stage. But I remember my beloved teacher, Miss Rita Constanzi, who was teaching me during that time in UBC. And she just wrote me this beautiful letter before I went on stage. And I was just reading it while in the backstage while they were still playing their overture. And basically, the letter said, just think about the journey that we have worked together, and think about the sacrifice that your parents made for you in order to support you with your and in uh, your own life journey with this instrument, how you struggled, how you fell in love again, and how you felt defeated, but then you came back again. And then if there is time, think about me, how I how I nurtured you, and our ups and downs, and all these will enrich your music and make you a stronger player on stage, you are ready to tell your story and just go out there, right? So I just it just really struck me during that moment, and just like kind of have a reflect back on since I was 4 years old, and then I was maybe like 20 during that time. That felt long, but now it feels even longer. Um, and so when I went on stage, I feel my whole mindset just transformed from being, oh, that was also the biggest concert I've ever played, because that concert was in Chen Center, and
Wow.
we had a full house. It was like 2,000, 2,500 or
Yeah,
something.
big venue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I went out there, and then suddenly I knew I was in the right mindset, and it was transforming for me, and so
Mhm.
therapeutic for me. Yeah, and the performance went really well. So
That's great. And I always love that sort of special relationship the teacher have with a student and how they can impact and influence their own journey. It's such a
for
big thing for
sure, like
me.
before, yeah, yeah, for sure, yeah. I mean, my students are all like my children.
Right?
Yeah,
I
the
was just
coach.
gonna say that's a perfect segue to my next question for you because you're a very prolific teacher and my kids study the harp with you and you have plenty of students who are very accomplished at a very young age. Um, what do you love about teaching children? And also, I've always wanted to ask you about your sort of free teaching philosophy about paying attention to efficiency, passion, and precision. So how do you inspire that in your students?
Yeah, it's so funny because when I call them my children, I'm not kidding, because I when see myself performing, I could see my teacher shadow, really.
Mhm.
And then one time when my student performed on stage, in the audience came the daughter of my uh, harp teacher, and she didn't know I was teaching there. She didn't know that student was my student. But then she said she could see her mom.
Oh, wow.
I think that must be Joy's student. So there's this family relationship, granddaughter and
Mhm.
grandmom even. So I think when you start teaching a student, especially at a young age, you shape them. Not, I mean, very basic is the posture. Whatever you're doing, they will be doing, and they look at you, your hands, right? So they will physically look like you. Um, but it just, I think every little thing's down to like the way you talk, the way you express about music, your ideas. I think they weekly, when they communicate with you that way, they really followed your ideas and your inspirations. Yeah, it's actually something new that I felt for the past few years. I didn't really feel that when I was a student. Maybe because I was already feeling like I learned generally a little faster than other music students.
Mhm.
Um, but efficiency, I feel students are kids are getting busier these days.
They are.
Yes, and honestly, I think it's a generation thing. On average, they don't they don't have the idea of craftsmanship like
Not
our
quite yet, isn't it?
anymore. I think it's the technology. They are more leaning towards like an instant gratification. But
Mm.
I have to remind them that sometimes skills, you have to develop your muscles. So sometimes even this passage, when they get frustrated when they like try the fifth time in lesson, and then they go, ah! And I said, "What's wrong?" They're like, "I never get it right." And I said, "You go practice about 1,000 times, and then if you still don't get it, then we can think about, maybe this is not the right piece for you. But until you do 20 times a day for like a few weeks, and that will add up to like thousands, okay? Um, it's normal that you don't get it.
Yes. And a little bit of math lesson for them too, hey?
So usually they just open their eyes like, yeah, don't come back after you practice for 1,000 times. And they don't think like I'm crazy. Um, but I think so if they're running out of time, then efficiency is so important. So you have to teach them how to practice. And when you practice, it's very indulging because you enjoy the music so much, but you sometimes can overlook at some of the difficult parts. So you sometimes you have to plan ahead and then tell yourself, I know it's boring, but I actually need to do this passage very slowly for about 10 times. And then we'll see how it will bring us in a week. But sometimes children can't have the discipline. So you have to actually mark down, okay, this is what you need to do for practicing. So that's what I mean by efficiency. Passion, I think, is very straightforward. You need to have the passion when you play. But I think sometimes it takes the teacher to kind of know what the students want. And I try to use pictures and stories and just um, the creative side to encourage the students to use their imaginations. And I think that really helps with their musical ideas. And once they see that picture, then they will start liking the piece. Sometimes it's not the melody that attract the students in the first place, but then the more they practice, they actually get more engaged with the music as well.
Mhm.
The third part was yes, precision, because once, and that's something that I think as a performer I can teach. That part. It's sometimes you sound good in the practice room, and it doesn't mean that you will be fine on stage. So I have to prepare them to be at their best at stage. And it's not just so that like you know the notes, right? But mentally you have to kind of be their life coach before a big event. How you're eating and how you're managing your time. Are you sleeping enough? But mentally you have to be ready, like mentally, right? So the precision is you can have physical like some technical exercises to help you get through the challenging passages, um, but also you have to be mentally prepared. So that's the side that because I also have gone through that so many times. um, I mean, even for myself, not every time it would work. There would still be something bothering me on stage that surprised me. But at least we try our best to eliminate different factors that will affect you, so then you could
Mhm.
focus and be really expressive on stage.
Yeah. And every learner is different too. Everyone learn at different pace. I can really see that between my two kids, and then also when they stack up with the rest of their classmates in the harp ensemble class, everyone is quite different. What are your word of advice for learners to find their own passion with the harp? What are some of the best way to be connected with your instrument without necessarily comparing with everyone else?
Yes, I think you need to have a personal goal, like what you want to accomplish. Maybe you're preparing for an event, then okay, then that's a really good goal, or for a concert, or you're preparing for an exam, or if you want to join like a youth orchestra or a harp ensemble, but then that means you have to know the music before the rehearsal. So I think that kind of motivation really would help. Um, Also, see what you can share with your talent in the future. So, if you, let's say, if you can eventually play at the church or you're attending, for some musical service, um, talk to the pastors, talk to the office, or your school or your music teacher, see if they would like a harpist to appear in some Christmas event, for example, or grad ceremony. So find opportunities that you can share and connect with the community with your music. And I think that's very important because once that you're sharing and then you can see how people enjoy your playing, um, then that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you're doing it, you know, at the Carnegie Hall with the music critics and with the, ticket goers, or if you're playing at a nursing home, for the elderlies, and they often cry after you play. That's the most important. I think be able to share your talent and feel useful. then,
Mhm.
then you will be able to continue with your instrument.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's harp, it's also a really nice instrument for
Yeah,
sharing. A lot of
yeah,
people really get drawn
sure.
to the sound of the harp, so
We're
really
lucky.
encourage that. Yeah. And let's switch gears now that we've talked about harp ensemble. So, Vancouver Academy of Music, you are the harp department head there, and I think you have been there for quite some time now. Tell us about how things have changed. I think you started with only a few students in there, and recently you had a harp fest that I think there were over 40 harpists on stage. It was pretty amazing. Tell us about that journey and what is the Academy's harp department about?
The academy offers private lessons, private harp lessons, um, and we have actually several student orchestras also. But I always thought that, like we said, we always felt alone, really
Mhm.
lonely when we were playing the harp. And harp is unique because it could be treated as like piano. So it could be like a solo. It is a solo instrument, but it's also considered an orchestral instrument. Um, so I often ask myself what we could do to make harp students feel more involved and have companionship, so they don't feel alone. So that was when I think developing harp ensemble, uh, this idea came, and we have a adult ensemble and a children ensemble, um, and they it has been really well received with our feedback. Um, I think a lot of students they were surprised by how many people, because they're probably the only one in the school that in their school that plays the harp. But then when they come and meet and they realize, they're not alone, and they're playing sometimes the same part, sometimes different part with their friends. I think it's a nice motivation to practice together, to rehearse together. Um, because in the symphony orchestra, sometimes when you go there, you still feel alone because you're the only one, the only
Yeah.
harpist, maximum two harpists there, and you often don't really know people there, like the violinist or the woodwinds. They hang out more, right? So then when you go
Mhm.
there, you're still pretty alone. But I think in the harp ensemble, since you meet periodically, you meet people, and so it's more fun that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I found in my children, and they're not very accomplished harpists, but what I was very surprised when both of them tell me after doing one semester of harp ensemble that they want to come back. I think they really want to play with other kids, like
Yeah.
just that sense of belonging and having a very definite goal, right, for them to work towards, because they know that's the piece we're going to be playing for this week, and I'm going to work towards it. And I think for better or for worse, it helps them focus their energy a little
Yeah.
bit better.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm also working on right now, is that, to develop a harp department, you need the quantity, but you also, once you have the quantity, you also want to work on the quality. Um,
Mhm.
and I think by observing and learn from each other, encourage people to practice more, and
Mhm.
hence the quality of your own art skill. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and also we our plan is actually we might have also a scholarship competition. So then we can offer some, some financial aids to people who are who really deserve some extra help or who really need, the financial help. So yeah, so I think we're heading to the right direction. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
And I have asked Elizabeth Robert-Ply about how the harp scene has changed in Canada over the years. And you have been quite active here in Vancouver's harp scene for some time now. What are some of your observations and what are some of your hopes for the harp community here in Vancouver in the coming years?
I think we're really blessed because in Vancouver, it's a unique city. Um, we have so many loving parents who are just so supportive with their with their with their children's music education, um, and I could see that it's really the harp scene is really blooming in Vancouver, and I think as the whole city we have the resources, we could even do more. There's potential. So that was why the first Harp Fest happened, and I'm hoping to have more in the future. And and as we grow stronger in size, we can also have more interesting events, and we would be able to attract more, actually more international harpists to come and play, perform for us if
Mhm.
there is a market.
Yeah.
Um, it's I think we need to get the word out there that Vancouver, it's a harp city. uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, but I think we're they started to know. I think we're starting to get attention now. Like I actually got was had a chance to talk to the harp factories in Italy and in Chicago, and they were all very pleased with the harp sales for the
Yeah.
past few years. All the harps shipping to Vancouver because we had more students learning the harp now. So that's
Mhm.
a good sign, and they could see that from the numbers. Um,
Mhm.
and also, we because of the pandemic, we actually was able to invite some of the other harp teachers to give masterclass online, and they were just overwhelmed with the size and with also the quality of our students. Um, like I said, the how the people who are learning the harp, we kind of started um, nurturing them a few years ago. So some really hardworking ones, they start to reach to a very advanced levels. There's very strong artistry in their playing, and we start to get noticed also by other teachers like the professor from Juilliard School, um, from Curtis. They all have commented on how impressed they were by our students.
Mhm. That's awesome. Now, this follow-up question partly is because I am an adult and I start learning the harp quite late in my life. I oftentimes would hear people say that, music learning is more suitable for kids. They're younger, they have more opportunity and time and, mastery that they can develop over the years. But I think there are a lot that an adult harp learner can also gain from
Yeah.
learning the harp too. Yeah, what would be your advice for adult who just want to learn the harp? I don't think that, being competitive is always have to be number one sort of our goal, right? So what are some suggestions you have for adult harp learners who want to just, either enjoy the instrument in a more deeper level or maybe even just get to start the instrument?
Well, I think you learning music should it should just it should be a process, and you need to enjoy the process. It's not the goal. if you were an adult student, let me ask you what is your goal, right? If your goal is to become like a world class concert artist, then I have to tell you that that's very difficult, right? Because most of the musicians they started young, so that's not too realistic, right? But so when they say it's too late as an adult student to learn the music, it sounds funny because it's almost assuming like you learn the music because you want to be like next Lang Lang or something, right? Which is
Ah,
really
not
not the
realistic. There's only so many of
for
them out there.
yeah, for most of the adult students, and I'm pretty sure they are just taking music lessons so then they can relax and they can enjoy the music, not to make a second career. So if that's the case, then it's never too late to learn. Like when you start plucking the strings and you enjoy the sound, that's it. That's why you learn the music, right? And of course, you'll get better. And once you, I think I observed most of the adult students is that they will be very interested in the instrument, but then they will hit a plateau in about 2 or 3 years because then they feel like they don't have any goals, like what's next, right? So, and that's why I also insist that we needed to have not just children ensemble, but an adult ensemble, so that the moms can be together and just to make friends, not be with the children, but have their own group. So
Mhm.
that's one thing that I wanted to create to motivate adult students to get going. In
Mhm.
the um, in the academy, we also have an adult student only symphony actually, and that's something that I feel some of the adult students can also join because it's not it's special. It's
Mhm.
special when it's all adult students and they're not semi-professional; they're just students, right? So it's a more laid back experience, but together you're playing symphonic work that are quite epic already, and I think that's also very interesting, very fun, and you get to
Mhm.
meet other adult students as well,
I feel
not just
like that if I sign up for an adult harp ensemble, the meeting other people is probably the biggest
yeah.
draw for me.
Talk about since you guys share the same interests, then you can really learn from each other and talk about harps. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I think for those students, but also very see if you can also again bring harp to your daily life, like play at your office Christmas party once a while, play at church or during holidays, maybe see if you can actually play for people at nursing homes or go to your children's school and introduce them about harp. That's also very nice if you could do like an outreach program since you love your instrument so much anyway. So there's always ways to make your hobby more out there and yeah, to really be active with your hobby. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of my guests says that she've learned to be social with the harp, and I think that is so important because music is such a nice thing to share with others, and I almost feel like when you're just playing it to yourself in the living room, you're depriving the rest of the world from the beautiful music that you could share with
Yeah.
them. So I really agree with
Yeah.
your suggestion of
And
sharing it.
it's an instrument that's it's such a great conversation opener.
It is actually. Yeah. And not a lot of people have seen a harp in real life. I have realized that. Every
Yes.
time I bring the harp to the office, someone will always tell me this is the first time they have seen a harp. Or a lot of people only get to see it from afar, when you go to an orchestra, right? It's out in the stage, but no one has touched it, had never
And
experienced.
I think that's why there are so many people interested in harps now, is that people are a little tired about piano lessons and violin lessons, it has reached to like a maximum, I think. It's almost so common that it doesn't feel like a talent anymore. Sometimes, especially when you go to schools and then you ask people how many people can play piano. So for harp, it's unique that way, and I think right now we're looking for being really like celebrate
Mhm.
your own uniqueness,
Mhm.
um, and leave impression to people. So I think this is what some of the parents they have in mind is that they want an instrument that is special and sound great from the start. That's also very
Yeah, no
important.
violin in here. I'm just gonna say it out loud.
Yeah, and their kids can enjoy it. It looks beautiful too. So
Yeah, and it is such a versatile instrument too. That's why
yes,
I got very drawn to the harp because, even between the pedal harp and the lever harp, there's so many different things you can do. And then with the different technologies now that have been developed, right, to work with harp, making it, electric harp or electroacoustic, like there's just so much you can
yes,
do with the instrument. And I
yes.
can actually carry it out. I can put a piano in the back of my car very
Ah!
easily. So it just has been a really nice instrument to have and be able to share with just even within the family too. Seeing that, both little people and bigger people can enjoy the same instrument. So that journey has actually been quite wonderful for us as a family too.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed talking to you. If we want to watch your shows, what are the best way actually to find out which harpist is featured in an orchestra? That is actually a question I want to know because a lot of time I'll go to an orchestra and I don't even know how to find out who was in there.
So if you play with this orchestra regularly, uh, I think you're contracted. So your name will be on their website under orchestra. Yeah.
Mhm,
So that's how you can find out their regular harpist.
mhm,
Um, Obviously, sometimes we will have people stepping in, and that
mhm.
then their name might not be in the program because it was printed a while ago. So that's unfortunate. Um, but and then as for soloists, which I will have to say we still lack in Vancouver. We need
Yeah,
more harpists traveling here to give concerts.
we
But
do.
they're usually then in their seasonal brochure of the
Mhm.
organization with VSO or with some other recital society. Um, then they will have there usually the new program comes out in the summer or maybe springtime or summer because all the concert season it goes kind of like with the school year. So the season starts in September and ends before summer. So if you want to find out the next season, I think during springtime or summertime, then you can see what they have planned in store.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, well, I hope that in a couple of years' time, the programs will have a lot more harpists, feature a
Yes.
lot more harp
And
solos.
that's what we're working on right now. We have to
Yeah.
create enough harpists here in order to harpist.
We're getting there. I was still very touched by that very last moment in the festival where you call up all the people who could play the harp to come on stage. That must be a very magical moment for you.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and the harp teachers too, there are quite actually a lot in Vancouver, which I was again very surprised by because I usually think a lot of people, will be teaching piano and violin, the more common
Yes.
instrument. I was surprised by how many harp teacher we have here too. So that's
Yes.
always a good sign that hopefully there are more harpists being
Yes, for
sort
sure.
of in the
Yeah.
making.
Yes. I think it
Yeah,
is.
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I might have to circle back to you later if there's news about Vancouver harp scene that we should, let the rest of the world
Sure.
know.
Yes, please. You're doing such a wonderful job with this channel. So we could learn about harp and learn about other artists as well. It's such a good, it's just such a good platform to get everybody together. So yeah,
Thank you.
thank
I think the harp community has been wonderful so far, and I mean, selfish me wants Vancouver to become a harp central so that I don't have to fly to other cities to enjoy
her. Yeah,
this. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the growth of that we have seen in Vancouver and continuing to involve my kids and hopefully myself too at the Vancouver Academy of Music's harp department going forward.
for sure.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.